In a perfect world, people with ADHD would be diagnosed early and would be raised and taught by compassionate adults who understand that you're not doing what you're doing to be annoying, or to be rebellious, or to get attention, or to piss people off. In a perfect world, we would have all grown up knowing there's nothing wrong with us. Our brains just work a little differently. And that there are ways we can help our brains to be less of a pain when we need them to do things like focus or be quiet. Unfortunately, that's not the way the story went for many of us. Many of us were diagnosed as teens or adults after years of damage had already been done. Now, I don't mean damage like you're forever damaged and broken. I just mean you probably endured years of being shamed and blamed for behaviors that you couldn't help and couldn't control. Adults probably responded to you with discipline instead of support. Fun fact: punishment is the least effective method of behavior modification. I used to work with kids with severe behavioral problems, and that's one of the first things they teach you in training. Punishment does not teach kids, particularly not kids with ADHD, because it's not like kids with ADHD want to be having outbursts in class. They probably want to stop doing that just as much as the adults want them to stop doing that. Punishment just adds insult to injury. I happen to go to a very old-fashioned, religious, conservative school that enforced very traditional gender roles. So to be a girl who was outspoken and couldn't handle her anger was seen as particularly unacceptable. I was also incredibly academically voracious, and I always wanted to dive fully into whatever we were learning and do 3 times as much research as everyone else. 'Cause hyperfocus.
But a school would love to see that kind of enthusiasm in a kid, right?
Wrong. Teachers used to accuse me of showing off or thinking I was better than people. I was also accused of disrespecting teachers' authority when I would do things like read more books than we were assigned, or offer extra information to the class during a lesson. Basically, I was a know-it-all, and I can understand how that could be annoying. Hell, I probably understood at the time how that could be annoying, but even when it became clear that it was getting me in lots of trouble to blurt out facts about mountain lions in the middle of class, I didn't stop doing it. Because I couldn't stop doing it. Because impulse control problems. Which is something I didn't understand until much, much later. All I knew when I was little is that I didn't want to get in trouble, but I kept getting in trouble. And no matter how hard I tried to be good, I always seemed to stick out like a sore thumb and get scolded and punished and shamed. As I got older and moved into my teens and became more self-conscious, I developed some really creepy behaviors like compulsive apologizing and being hyper-polite all the time, because I felt like I was deeply unacceptable on a fundamental level, and that I should apologize for who I am and for any annoyance that I might have caused others. Ironically, it was the compulsive apologizing that got real annoying real fast. I also developed really controlling eating habits around this time, because as a kid I was often yelled at for eating too gluttonously and too often, and in too unladylike of a way. So I figured I'd better be hypervigilant about that so no one could call me out on it. Despite these attempts to control and contain myself, I would still have these outbursts and fits of overwhelm and frustration that my peers seemed to have outgrown a long time ago. Why can't I just control myself? I wondered desperately, painfully, every day. And then when my bulimia entered the picture, it was pretty much all shame, all the time. Side note, ADHD has been linked to severe eating disorders, and I will leave more info on that down below. So anyway, first I'm ashamed because I can't control my emotions, and then I'm ashamed because I can't control myself around food, and based on everything everyone had ever told me, that was my fault, right? Wrong. So very wrong. Getting on meds for my ADHD showed me pretty immediately that my brain hadn't been functioning properly for a long time. Suddenly, I was faced with the task of processing the many years of my life I had spent hating myself and shaming myself because that's what I had been taught to do. So how the hell do you even start to untangle that kind of emotional mess? One of the most helpful things for me was a type of therapy where you imagine that you are talking to a younger version of yourself, knowing everything that you know now. I also did a lot of writing to my younger self, because I do that, but you don't have to write. Talking or just imagining it can work just as well. In these sessions, I told my younger self that I loved her, that she was worthy of love, that she didn't deserve the pain and shame that she went through, and most importantly, that things were going to get so much better. I told my little self that her love of words would one day be celebrated by many, and to keep writing, always. I told her I was so sorry that she had to go to school in an environment that punished her for things she couldn't control, instead of trying to understand her, instead of trying to help her, instead of appreciating the many ways she was amazing. Another technique that I've found helpful is to catch myself when I'm saying unkind, shaming things to myself, and to ask myself, Grace, is that really your voice, or is that the voice of Mrs. Ruined Your Life? Usually, I realize that it's not my voice, and that it's some old voice from some old story I internalized about myself. A story that's not true, and that never was true. And this brings me to my last and most important piece of advice on dealing with shame. Write your own story. You've probably been told who you are by so many people who didn't understand you and didn't see you. They only saw your illness. You can take the power back into your own hands by redefining yourself the way that you want to be defined. For me, spoken word and slam poetry were and are a great medium for telling my own story, but you can tell your own story however and through whatever medium you want to. It can even be a totally internal story you tell to yourself. It could be just a little whisper to yourself as you drift off to sleep. Hey self, yeah, me, this self, you're okay. You are not a failure. You are beautiful and you deserve an amazing life. That's all for now, folks. Catch you next time.